ending same-sex marriage, limiting immigration, AI technology, the American alliance with Israel. These are some of the hot-button issues being hashed out during a conference of political conservatives here in Washington this week. NatCon, which stands for National Conservatism, is only in its 5th year, but it has become a hub for the brand of hard-right politics that's now a powerful force in the Republican Party. Joining me to discuss The Hill's Emily Brooks, author of The Movement, a weekly newsletter looking at the influences and debates on the right here in Washington. Emily, tell us about NatCon and how it's become such an influential force.
Hi, Drew. Well, I'm coming to you from a little cubby in the press room on Capitol Hill, but I did go to NatCon for a couple of the opening sessions, and it really is, unlike other big conservative conferences that people are familiar with, like CPAC, like Turning Point USA events that are really big and flashy and have fireworks and pyrotechnics in some cases. This is really about the intellectual backbone of that nationalist movement that's really grasped hold of the Republican Party and the second Trump administration. And so a lot of the ideas that have been discussed at NatCons in previous years are now being implemented by the Trump administration. One thing that, somebody pointed out was the idea of taxing university endowments more, something that President Trump signed into law this year, was already discussed at NatCon in years past. So things like that. And it's really where a lot of the party internationalist conservative debates are happening as well.
Yeah, kind of a who's who of conservative movement figures speaking at the event. Everyone from Steve Bannon, Josh Hawley, Russ Vought, Tulsi Gabbard's going to be there. Let's talk about the issues being discussed. What is being said about overturning same-sex marriage? And do you expect that, like other issues, to be a cause that ends up being taken up by Republicans in the coming years?
Yeah, I think that is something that is definitely on the to-do list for the national conservatism movement, really getting into that more aggressive lane on social issues and policy there. So there was an entire panel on overturning Obergefell, the Supreme Court case that legalized same-sex marriage. And there, I think that that's going to be a preview about the kind of efforts we can expect to see this movement take as they get even more and more emboldened and progressive, especially seeing how the Trump administration has just the way that Rachel Bovard, who is a vice president at the Conservative Partner Institute and spoke at the conference, the way she put it is you can just do things. And now they're looking at what Trump has done and using that as inspiration to do more and more.
What's the conversation there surrounding immigration?
And this is one of the areas that I think pretty much everybody is in lockstep, but it has caused some heartburn from beyond the national conservative lane into other areas of the conservative movement because they are so anti-immigration, not only, locking down the southern border, but immigration restrictionist, not wanting to allow any even more legal immigration. I think that, of course, they're pretty much all in agreement on closing down the southern border, but a lot in the national conservative movement are looking at even more restrictive measures. And one of the big debates that happens on the right is over issues like H-1B visas, which are visas for workers often used for a lot of tech workers that come from other countries. And the employers have to go through a special process to get approved for H-1B visa and show that there weren't any Americans that they would hire and place for that job. And that is something that national conservatives really don't like. But, conservatives in other ideological areas who are more like free market don't think that it's a good idea to lock down immigration. So that's sort of their position there.
When it comes to U.S. policy towards Israel, there's been a split on the right. Some take the traditional view of American conservatives that Israel is an essential ally and support should be ironclad. Others have been critical of Israeli actions in the war in Gaza and are advocating for recalibration of the alliance. How is that playing out at NatCon?
Yeah, something that previous NatCons haven't gotten too deep into, but of course, as the war in Gaza has dragged on, there's a lot more, especially I hear over and over from people in the national conservative space that young people, especially, are very skeptical of the U.S. Israel alliance that has really dominated and defined, in a lot of cases, American politics and the Republican Party. And, Republicans as a whole are still very supportive of Israel, but they're, in this nationalist movement, they're having to contend with what do we do with that? And so they're opening up that debate. There was a whole panel where there were differing views on the Israel-U.S. relationship, and it's very much still an open debate on the right. You have some people who are very supportive of Israel who are at this conference, and some who really think that U.S.-Israel alliance and U.S. monetary support for Israel should cease.
What about AI policy? President Trump's winning coalition in 2024 included some prominent figures in the tech world, but others in the conservative movement are highly skeptical of big tech. How is that tension playing out?
Yeah, the way that Rachel Bovard put it in her speech was that, the tech, there's a lot of people on the tech right who are now part of this coalition that got Trump elected. But she says it's the role of the conservatives, especially people who are more socially conservative, to take control of certain issues and let the tech bros know that they are not driving the ship here. And they're talking about giving warnings about, some areas of tech, especially biotech, that people can get excited about. But there's a lot of worry about things like, testing embryos for genetic disorders, but other bioengineering issues. Those were brought up in speeches that I heard. And, there are a lot of people who are very excited about tech and the promise that it could bring, and frankly, the money that the tech world brings to support the right wing and Republicans and Republican candidates. And yet you still have people who are pretty skeptical about them going too far. It wasn't so long ago that a lot of those on the tech right were not necessarily on the same side as Republicans. Republicans were accusing the tech companies and social media companies of censoring them and really going after them. So that's going to be an interesting alliance to see, and where the policy goes and how much the right wing embraces it.
All right, Emily Brooks, always great to have your insight. We will leave it at that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.